If we asked you, who is the greatest hockey player in history? The short list probably looks like this. Okay, I added McJesus. I know, it's too soon to tell. Let's add a second bubble to create a Venn diagram of the greatest coaches in the history of the NHL. Do you notice anything? It makes a pretty Venn diagram with our choices. Players can make good coaches, but the really good players tend to not coach well at all. Gretzky's time in Phoenix, well, just take a look how he typically was behind the bench, and then tell me if he's having a good time. I like to say it's the pro star's curse. Jordan and Gretzky both had issues post-retirement, and Bo knew better. Which is a reference that kinda dates us. Ugh, we're getting old. Another thing the two guys had in common was a controversial gambling charge. Let's dive into Operation Slapshot. Wayne Gretzky, the NHL's golden boy, arguably even to this day. After breaking nearly every single record that was available to him, he retired in 1999 and moved on to new challenges. But why complicate things? Stick to what you know. Hockey. The then-named Phoenix Coyotes were in the process of changing ownership, and after a pitch, Gretz bought a 10% stake. The NHL loved this. Their golden boy had elevated hockey in Los Angeles and New York, and he could spur interest in Bettman's ride-or-die Sunbelt franchise. 5 years later, and Gretz got the bug. He was sick of sitting in the owner's box. He wanted to be on the ice again. But Wayne knew he was too old to play. He was no Gordie Howe. Why not put him behind the bench? The 05-06 season was a wild ride. I'm an Edmonton fan, I should know. The Phoenix Coyotes, however, finished out of playoff contention, and that's where the video should end, right? Gretz was a mediocre coach with an anger problem, and the Coyotes were a mistake in the first place. But what if I told you maybe they were tanking for a reason? When Gretz bought into the Coyotes, he brought in some folks he was familiar with. Guys like his former agent, Michael Barnett, and his line mates on the LA Kings, Rick Tocchet, were given positions in the Phoenix organization. Mike would become the general manager, and Rick would head behind the bench as Gretzky's assistant coach. Tocchet was an accomplished player with a Stanley Cup from his time with the 91-92 Penguins. Over 1,100 games played, 400 goals and 500 assists, all while racking up 2,000 penalty minutes and staying the NHL's leader in Gordie Howe hat tricks. Like I said, Tocchet knew how to play the game. Regardless of his talent and pleasant demeanor, he had a bit of a gambling problem. Sometime in the early 90s, while playing in Philly, he frequented a bar called Legends in the Holiday Inn lobby north of Wells Fargo Center. The bartender, James Harney, and Rick sparked up a friendship. Harney is a Flyers fan, so the two have natural chemistry. He lets Rick in on a little side project, an underground sports betting bookie. Now, no one at Dive-In is American, so we can't say if this has changed, but while it isn't illegal to place a bet, you can't run an unlicensed bookies in the US, so this turned out to be a major felony. Some time passed, and Rick would move to a new team, and Harney would become a police officer in New Jersey, moving the bookie operation along with him. Sports Illustrated mentions in their article, Bookie of the Year, that sometime around 2001, Harney had a third accomplice, James Ulmer, collecting wagers. Tocchet was still bringing in the bets, taking a 10% slice off the top for his services. Fast forward to 2005, and Tocchet brings the scheme with him when he becomes the assistant coach for the Coyotes. Gretz has always and will always say that he was never involved in the gambling scheme. But the same can't be said for his wife, Janet Jones. She loves poker. And guess who else loves poker? Rick Tocchet. So one thing led to another, and suddenly Janet's dropping what Sports Illustrated reported as $100,000 in a 6-week period, including $75,000 on that year's Super Bowl. She made $5,000 on the coin toss alone. This is just my opinion, but I think some people have a little too much money. In a 40-day period, Tocchet moved around $1.7 million from at least a dozen bettors, some of them being NHL players and coaches. The scheme just got too big to ignore. In October of 2005, the New Jersey police started investigating Harney thanks to a tip-off. By February of 2006, they had enough evidence. Janet, Tocchet, Harney, Ulmer, and Barnett were all subpoenaed under Operation Slapshot. The whole ring collapsed within a matter of hours. After all of this went public, the first thing that came to everyone's mind was, did the Coyotes suck because of gambling? Were they throwing games for profit? The NHL started an internal investigation, probably to keep the New Jersey police from nosing around in their inner workings. The first rumor was that the Bruno Scarfo crime family was involved somehow. Names like Skinny Joe Merlino were thrown about, but at the end of the investigation, neither the NHL nor the Jersey police found any connection to either throwing games or to the mob. It seemed like a bunch of close players and managers betting on everything from horses to baseball behind the scenes. To give you a sense of how much the 10% skim from the take improved a regular blue-collar guy's life, Harney's house was raided, and the Edmonton Journal wrote they found $25,000 worth of Rolexes, 9 plasma TVs, 2 of which were in his bathroom. Phoenix got a black eye, and so did Gretzky's reputation. Every chance he got, he would deny, knowing that Janet was placing these kind of bets. For the record, she later admitted he only played the horses. James Harney was hit the hardest of all the accused. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 5 years in prison for money laundering and promoting gambling in late 2007. He was suspended from the New Jersey State Police and resigned to avoid a full firing. Janet Jones fared really well for her involvement. In their interrogation of Gretz, he mentioned on record that he knew about Tockett's gambling ring, but nothing really ever came of it. His wife got off scot-free along with Mike Barnett, Jeremy Roenick, and Travis Green, the last 2 being longtime hockey players. There were rumblings that Janet and Rick would sue the NHL for defamation, but we couldn't find anything about it. We suspect it was all hot air and they were just told to drop it if they knew what was good for them. James Ulmer and Rick Tocchet would get 2 years probation, but Rick's punishment wasn't over. The NHL had to make an example of him. A 2-year ban was put in place and he had to go through drug and behavioral training before returning to the NHL. He also was banned from gambling if he wants to keep his job, which turned out to be an issue because since the suspension, Rick had been playing poker professionally and was honestly doing quite well. He finished second in a tournament in December of 2006. In 2008, he would return to coaching, but to the Tampa Bay Lightning under John Tortorella. His suspension was very unpopular amongst the players, who themselves would have personal side bets on other sports in the locker room. In 2016 and 2017, he would add 2 more cups to his resume as the assistant coach to Mike Sullivan's Penguins. Currently, he's tearing up the Pacific Division as the head coach of the Vancouver Canucks, in their best season since 2011. You might also notice there's a tournament from 2023 on that list. Let's get into how the NHL might have given up on the punishment. Rick has obviously been allowed to return to gambling. Heck, even Janet has. She went to a high-stakes $1 million a hole golf tournament the year after the whole scandal happened. She was completely brazen with her involvement, being photographed, interviewed, and she still admitted to loving gambling, placing in a poker tournament in 2011. Any further internal investigation from the NHL seems to be shelved. Rick was far from the only hockey player to be caught up in gambling charges over the NHL's long history, but they don't seem to worry about it much anymore. Gretzky would end up in a bunch of gambling commercials in 2023 alongside Connor McDavid for BetMGM. We're starting to wonder if this is a case of, if you can't beat them, join them. The Arizona Coyotes' reputation wasn't helped by the whole debacle. Since no one bet on the games, they didn't suck on purpose. They sucked for real. There was a no win-win outcome for them in this situation. And as the 2023-2024 NHL season comes to an end, so does the Coyotes' time in Arizona. Bettman's pet project in the 5th largest city in the US never really worked out. The best showing they had was a divisional championship in 2011. The fan base never materialized, and the move from Winnipeg in 1996 might not have been the best idea in the long term. We wish the new team in Utah the best of luck, but wonder what a revived Nordiques team might look like. Sure, Quebec is a small market, but it has more fans than seats in the arena. Maybe the NHL will recognize that one day. Until then, hockey will most likely return to the desert before it crops up around Le Plans d'Abraham anytime soon. Despite the somber ending, it's kind of poetic that their last opponent is the Edmonton Oilers. They are the team that put Gretz on the map to begin with, and the cities have a well-hidden close bond. Edmonton and Phoenix are 2 sides of the same coin. One is the coldest place in the world, and the other is the hottest. Both are the 5th largest cities in their respective countries, get their water from the Edmonton Power Corporation, or EPCOR, and both have huge fan bases from Edmonton. Anytime the Coyotes would play the Oilers, a good chunk of the crowd could be seen wearing orange and blue. And this isn't isn't something random, there is reasons for this. When the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis happened, lots of folks from Canada, especially Edmonton, bought homes in Phoenix to snowbird. My father talks about going to Phoenix games for $20 a ticket with a free hot dog and beer included. The Coyotes were a bottom basement option to go see the NHL, when in Edmonton, just a ticket would cost you $300. Forget about those $12 Coliseum crack beers and the $8 slice of Pizza 73. We do hope that Utah has a bit more of an enthusiastic fan base, but only time will tell. Until then, thanks for watching.